Okay, it takes a while. Okay, we're live. Everything looks okay. Let's. It's too much. Greetings. Hey, good to see you all. Got people checking in. 3 minutes to go.
It's 6 o'clock.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhasa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhasa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhasa. So the last two times we got together, I spoke about the jhanas and focusing entirely on the 4 jhanas of form. So for the sake of completeness and rounding out this series, today I'll speak about the formless states. These are refinements of jhana. It's a further shift of consciousness from the realm of form to the realm of the formless. There are 4 planes of consciousness listed in Abhidhamma. There's the sense desire consciousness, which is our normal walking around default day-to-day consciousness. There's the consciousness of the realm of form, which is jhana, or the Brahma gods have the equivalent. And the third is the formless. And that is mind only. There's no relation to form or matter. And the fourth is nibbana, or the unconditioned. So as we go through, advance through these 4 planes of consciousness, the experience gets subtler and simpler, more basic, less complicated. The lowest level, the level of sense desire, is very complex. There's a lot going on, and we shed whole layers of becoming as we experience the other realms. It's a very worthwhile exercise to try and at least get a taste of experience of higher levels of consciousness. The 4 formless jhanas are states of mind that have transcended any relationship to the body or physicality, matter in general. And beings that exist at that level, in fact, have no body. They're pure mind, mind only. The 4 levels within that formless are classified as the level of boundless space, level of boundless consciousness, the level of nothingness, and the level of neither perception nor non-perception. When we encounter those names, particularly the last 2, and especially the last one, when we encounter those names in reading or listening to the Dhamma, they can sound very puzzling, and it's difficult to understand exactly what's being talked about. But the key is not to try and intellectualize it, not to approach it with an analytical mind trying to figure it out. That's endlessly going to be frustrating. The key to getting some understanding of this is to try and explore within and try and find at least a semblance of the experience. And I think this is really true of Dhamma in general, that we can endlessly read books and even suttas and Abhidhamma, listen to Dhamma talks, and these can be useful, valuable activities for gaining some kind of structure in the mind, but in the end, they're only pointing us towards the truth. We have to find the truth within. Dhamma can only really be grasped immediately by the mind, by direct experience, not by fabrication. Now, it should be said also that when we're talking about the jhanas in general, whether they're form jhanas or formless, there is a very big difference between having some experience, some encounter with those states, and having mastery of those states. I think people tend to think of the jhanas as being so remote and inaccessible, and not realize that they may have, if they've done any amount of serious meditation, they may have touched on jhana states many times. And I think it's the same with the formless states. Actual mastery of the formless states is a very difficult attainment. When the Bodhisattva was practicing his austerities, he first went to a teacher who took him up to the level of the base of nothingness, the third formless jhana. And the teacher was impressed that the Bodhisattva could master this state, and he offered to share his leadership of that community with him. So this tells us a number of things about the Bodhisattva and the history of the time. One is that the Bodhisattva was truly a spiritual pioneer, that he had attained this state, very subtle state of mind and mastery of it, without too long of an effort. And this so impressed the teacher that he offered to share the leadership of the community, which means this was a very rare thing, very unusual. But the Buddha also, or the Bodhisattva, we should say, also knew, and this was an incredible insight, he also knew that this was not the end of the road. This was still conditioned. Almost anyone having mastery of a state like that would think that that is the end of the path, if they had no knowledge otherwise. Then he went to a second teacher who taught the base of neither perception nor non-perception, the fourth formless jhana. And that teacher actually himself did not have mastery. He was just teaching by rote from his master. So the Buddha surpassed him and attained to that state and mastery of that state. And the teacher offered to give the Buddha over soul leadership. The Buddha again knew this was still conditioned. So this tells us that the mastery of these states is quite a rare attainment. But I think we can get some inkling, some taste of these ideas, these states of mind, without superhuman difficulty. And before this stream is over, I'm going to include a short guided meditation to try and demonstrate this for you. Because of time constraints, it'll be rather abbreviated, but it'll give you the method, and then you could try it on your own. There are in the suttas, there are given at least two or even three different methods of approach for the formless states. One of them is to use, as a beginning vehicle, use one of the Brahma Viharas, like meditation on metta or karuna, mudita, and expand that to infinity. So you're radiating metta, loving kindness, to all the beings in the 10 directions of space throughout the entire universe. And you hold that for a while, and then you remove your attention from the element of metta and pay attention only to the boundless space that remains. And then you can go on from there. Another method is using a kasina meditation. Kasina meditation, some people find very efficacious. That's taking a physical object like a colored disc and using eye consciousness as the base for the samadhi. So one can go into jhana on contemplation of a colored disc. And to turn it into a formless abiding, you start with a physical disc. You make something out of wood or cardboard or ceramic, yellow, red, wet, blue, and you focus on it until you can visualize it in the mind without the use of the physical object. And that's your nimitta. That becomes the object of the meditation. And if you want to turn it into a formless meditation, you expand the nimitta until it's infinite in all directions, and then you remove it from consciousness and pay attention only to the boundless space. So what these two methods have in common is that you are removing something from consciousness. And the method I'm going to explain here is yet a third one, which I've used before in groups. I've adapted it from the Chula Sunyata Sutta of the Majjhima Nikaya. And it's an exercise in specific non-attention. So we're going to go through a series of stages, and at each stage, you basically don't add anything to the mind. You try and ignore some aspect of reality and see what's left. So a couple of things, before we begin, a couple of things about how this works. One is that although this is a meditation that does use the faculty of imagination, what you're primarily doing is abstracting away sections or layers and seeing what remains underneath. You don't try and conjure up, say, the base of boundless space. You take away the previous base and you see what's there, and that will be boundless space. It's already present, but it's hidden by the more complex layers. So you focus on that, just removing as we go, peeling layers. The other caution is don't try and figure it out. And don't get lost in analytical thought. Just go with the experience. And we're going to go through 7 stages. There are 3 stages of ordinary experience or form, and then the 4 stages of the formless. And if you want to practice this later, or experiment with it on your own, I would encourage that. I do have on my website, I do have a write-up of this you can go to, so you don't have to try and memorize what I'm doing now. If you're interested in carrying it on, you can look it up. I've listed the stages. You could also read the original sutta, the Chula Sunyata, the Lesser Discourse on Voidness. Okay, so as we go through these stages, just follow along in your mind, and we'll begin with a general awareness. This is just a general gestalt awareness of your mundane reality. And this stage is named in the sutta, is named contemplation of village, where village is a name for ordinary daily reality. So just relax the mind, be receptive, and just try and be aware of your surroundings, your body, the seat you're sitting in, the computer, the room, just your immediate surroundings, without analyzing or judging, comparing. Just relax, general awareness. We'll just go with that for a couple of minutes. Allow your imagination to extend that field of awareness, so that you're taking in the mind not just the immediate visible surroundings, the room you're in, but spread it out to the neighborhood, the wherever you may be located, the surroundings, the ground, any trees, roads, other houses, whatever there might be. Just extend as far as it's comfortable, extend the mind out, and just be aware of the general ordinariness of the surroundings. Now hold in your mind that contemplation of the actual physical reality of a broad area around your present location. And we're going to make the first reduction or abstraction. Cease to pay attention to any man-made objects, houses, roads, telephone poles, whatever, and be aware only of the underlying natural world, the earth, the vegetation, the trees and grass, just very gently with the mind, just dissolve the man-made layer, just cease to pay attention to it. And this is called contemplation of forest, which is a contemplation of the reality of the natural environment. You just try and hold that in your mind for a couple of minutes and allow with your imagination to extend that to a broad area, the surrounding countryside, the hills, trees, forests, fields, whatever there may be in your area. And I think you can probably experience that this contemplation of forest is more peaceful than contemplation of village, but it's still relatively busy. So we're going to do the next stage. So beginning with contemplation of forest, now remove gently your attention from all living things, the grass and the trees and whatnot, and pay attention only to the underlying earth, the base on which everything rests. So you're aware of the ground, the soil and the rocks, the hills and valleys. If there are bodies of water nearby, then include those. But just the physical substrate of this earth. And again, continue to extend in your imagination to a broader and broader range, being aware of the landforms, the hills and mountains, the rocks and earth. And extend that contemplation until you're holding in your mind the entire earth, this ball, this globe of solid earth element. dense, heavy, impenetrable. The sphere of earth element. Earth element is defined as impenetrability or the taking up of space. So this earth, this sphere of solid earth element is occupying a certain region of space. And for the next transition, we're going to transition into the beginning of the formless realm by starting with that sphere of earth taking up a specific spherical region of space and just ceasing to pay attention to the earth and allow your mind to hold that spherical region of space. Now, it is in the nature of space not to have boundaries. So allow that boundary to dissolve and allow your awareness of space element to be boundless. Experience the infinity of space. Disregard any objects that might be in space. We're only interested here in space itself, infinite, boundless space element. All that exists here is boundless space and your awareness of that, consciousness of boundless space. So for the next transition, withdraw your attention from space and let there be boundless consciousness without reference to space. And holding that contemplation, now cease to pay attention to space and to consciousness. When we cease to pay attention to consciousness, we are left with nothing. This is the base of nothingness. No, literally no thingness. Kinchayatana. Without even consciousness as a referent. Base of no thing at all. But even nothingness is a kind of concept. So let go of that as well. What remains is the fourth base, the most subtle of all. It's called neither perception nor non-perception, but don't be concerned about the name. It's what remains when even nothingness is dissolved. You continue to hold that in your mind. I'm going to clap my hands twice. The first time, open your eyes, but don't abandon that state of meditation. And the second time will end the meditation completely. Form is emptiness, and emptiness is form. Okay, so I hope you were able to follow that along to some degree. This was very abbreviated. I just wanted to basically impart the instructions. If you're doing this on your own, I would suggest you stay much longer in each stage, maybe up to 10 minutes. and longer if you can manage it. There's a lot we can learn from this meditation. One is the fundamental principle that I iterated before in terms of the jhanas, that as we progress the mind into um, more refined states of consciousness, we're not actually going anywhere or doing anything special. We're returning the mind to a more natural state. It's all already there. You can see as we peel the layers off, there's nothing new being added. Underneath the man-made accoutrements of village, there's always the forest. And beneath the forest, there's always the earth. It's always there waiting. We're just distracted by the village and the forest, but there's the earth. And the earth is taking up space, and space is always there. Likewise for the four formless stages. I'll speak a little bit about some of the technicalities of the four stages. Boundless space, the first one, still has some remnant of attachment to the form level, because space is basically an attribute of the form kanda, the rupa kanda. So there is some very tenuous connection remaining to the realm of form. There is early controversy or a difference in the understanding of the nature of space between the Theravada school and the Sarvastivada school. Sarvastivada listed space as an unconditioned. The Theravada disputed that and said only nibbana is unconditioned. That space is either conditioned or a pure abstraction without any real reality. Conditioned space is something like when you dig a hole to make a well. You've conditioned that space, so that space is obviously conditioned. But space in the abstract, like we're dealing with here, has no real fundamental reality. It's just a concept of the mind. And boundless consciousness, the next one, is the mind unfettered, unbound. I have recently heard a suggestion that I think is interesting and quite possibly correct, that in ancient India, the base of boundless space, having been attained by some practitioners, became the basis for the Upanishadic view of the one universal mind. That could possibly be true. Then nothingness, akinchayatana, no reference to anything. So this is kind of emptiness in a more obvious or immediate sense, the absence of any referent. And neither perception or non-perception is the most subtle. And there's an explanation for the name given in the commentary. It says that you can't really say it's perception because the exception is so subtle that we don't really recognize it as ordinary perception. But you can't say it's non-perception because it's not a blank annihilation. And the text goes on to give a kind of a charming metaphor that it's as if say a bhikkhu was going on alms round and he's being attended by a novice, a samanera, and the samanera sees that there's a puddle of water up ahead, so he warns the monk, "Venerable sir, there is water." And the monk says, "Oh, good, there's water. Will you fill my flask for me, please?" And the novice says, "Venerable sir, there is no water." So there's neither water nor non-water. Um, and when we contemplate about these states, it has a number of, it gives us a number of insights. It helps us to clarify the nature of mind, because we're working with mind without reference to body. In our ordinary consciousness, mind is tangled up with body all the time. That's our natural way of being. But this is an attempt to abstract mind without body. And we can see it's always more subtle as we go up. When we analyze now, going to kind of an analytical mode or intellectual mode, talking about this, when we look at the levels of consciousness, and you'll see it in books, like in books of Abhidhamma, they'll have tables and charts, and they'll lay out the different realms and the different levels. And it's usually done in a vertical hierarchy. So sense desire at the bottom, and then the other realms stacked on top. And that's useful as explanatory, but I would suggest contemplating a different heuristic here, without taking it too literally, not getting caught by the metaphor. Don't miss the moon for the finger. But think of the levels of consciousness, instead of a vertical hierarchy, think of it as concentric circles, like a dartboard, a bullseye. At the center is nibbana, the unconditioned. And outside of that is the realm of the formless. And outside of that, the realm of form. And finally, the widest circle on the outside is sense desire realm. So as we move away from the center, we're moving away from the immediate pristine simplicity, and we're taking on levels of complication. It's like samsara exists in these layers, and we can simplify samsara, then we are getting closer to nibbana, in a sense. There's less there. There's less of samsara there. And neither perception nor non-perception would be samsara at its absolute theoretical minimum. This is conditionality at its simplest and purest. That in some respects, as a practice, it makes it more difficult to actually attain nibbana. Beings that exist in the formless realms do not attain nibbana from there. It's not possible, because you could say they're already existing at such a refined frequency that it's difficult for them, or impossible for them to move from that for the long aeons of time they exist there. But for us, dwelling in the human form, it's useful to get that perspective, and it helps us to generally understand our nature, and the nature of the mind, and the nature of conditionality. So I'll stop there and look to see what's going on in the chat. If you have any questions, just type them into the chat. I'll try and deal with it. Okay, someone's right away asking me to find that place on the website. Okay, I'm going to open up a browser window and try and find it. And if I do, I'll put the link in. Okay, well, that's loading. Let's see what else we got on here. Your previous talk about jhana helped me achieve good samadhi, but I've now lost it. I think because of my desire for jhanic pleasure, doubt, or too much effort. Yeah, I mean, it could be all of that. You have to try and find that state of effort without effort, or diligent effortlessness, where you're diligent, you're not missing anything, but you're not pushing with the mind. The jhana should feel like a restful state, not like a strain. Okay, I found that article. I'll just copy the link and put it in the chat. Okay, there it is. Oh, Jaya and Jeff on Cape Cod. Yeah, good to hear from you. I enjoyed my visit there some years back very much. Oh, Jody Powell just got back from snow plowing. We haven't had much snow here yet. We got a new snowblower this year and have hardly used it. Sitting cross-legged and with my back straight caused me to lose focus. I tend to get distracted by various pains that would arise. And he was overcoming this. Yeah, I could say a lot about that. But someone's asking, in case it's not clear, I kind of mumbled that reading his question. He's asking about pains arising in meditation. Trying to sit cross-legged causes him pain, and then he loses focus. The first thing is that there's to look into various physical means of making the body more receptive to sitting. There are certain yoga postures that are useful to do. The reason we mostly people who are raised in Western countries that are used to sitting in chairs find it difficult to sit cross-legged because our hips are not flexible enough. That's the underlying reason. Get a book on yoga or look it up and look for the cobbler's pose and the seated hero's pose. And if you do those two every day, even a couple of times a day, you'll begin to sit more comfortably. That's the first thing. The other thing is to experiment with different postures. You could use a sitting bench, or if it's really difficult for you, particularly if you're older, you might want to just sit in a chair as long as you keep the back straight. Sitting posture with the crossed legs is excellent if you can manage it comfortably. But the most important thing to know is that everybody experiences, or just about everybody experiences, physical pain when they meditate, particularly in the early stages. And you don't really overcome that when the pain goes away. You overcome that when you cease to let it bother you, when you're able to just disregard it. That's the real victory over pain. Would PT be able to be experienced without entering jhana? Yes. Yeah, we experience pity all the time. You can experience pity from mundane causes. You get excited because your team won the football game. You're experiencing some degree of pity. Would you say that effort without effort is synonymous with a kind of willful intention? No, not really. It's because I don't like that word willful. You're not, the whole thing is you're trying to find just the ease of just being present. And if you're willful, if you're trying to force it, then you're kind of missing that. Quick question. I was watching the Heavenly Realm video, and as you both conversed, I felt like my world was shifting around the topics discussed as if I was residing in one of those realms. Okay, uh, is there more? That's not a question yet. Is there a specific issue that this meditation is a remedy for? A specific time it is useful for or recommended? Um, I guess you could. I guess you could say that it would undermine attachment to views. It would undermine any materialist, annihilationist mind state for sure. Um, a specific time it is useful or recommended. Um, not particularly. Probably good any time. And I also find like that, I can add to that to say that um, if your mind is burdened with busyness or worries, things like that, this could probably be a good antidote for that because it clears all that away. You're just sitting in emptiness. Just wasn't sure if what is being discussed is a mental state that then begins to reflect in our experience. Okay, referencing back to this previous statement about feeling things shift around with the discussion of the Dewa realms. Um, yeah, it's sort of both really. There's an interesting one perspective on it on this is found in the Zen in the writings of Dogen in the Mountain Rivers and Mountains Sutra. He goes on for some time with the explanation about the different realms being entirely a matter of perception. It's the difference is perception. And he gives the example of a river. To a human being, it's clear flowing water. To a being in the hell realm, it's molten lava. To a naga, it's a wonderland of crystal palaces. And where is the real true river? How do monks stop the arising of lust? Is any practical approaches can be taken by lay people, particularly with reference to things like pornography addiction? Well, is stop looking at pornography is the obvious answer there. But there are meditations like meditation on 32 parts of the body, or even stronger medicine is meditation on corpses, which if you don't have a real corpse to meditate on, which is kind of hard to come by in this culture, you can do it imaginatively. Imagine rotting corpses. Is Maranasati one of the, or yeah, Maranasati is contemplation of death. Is Maranasati one of the best for attachment, sensual desire? No, Maranasati is not exactly focused on sensual desire. It's can overcome attachment to the body to some degree, but 32 parts would be a better one for overcoming sensual desire. Like if if the mind is fantasizing about a beautiful woman, then contemplate her intestines and her bone marrow and her phlegm, and, like that. But there is a formal meditation of doing 32 parts where you scan your own body, focusing on these 32 parts. You can find the list easily enough. It's all over the place. I was scanning through some of the Vinaya laws and I understood monks aren't allowed to practice medicine. Why is this? Isn't it a meritorious deed? They're discouraged from practicing medicine because it's a wrong livelihood. If you're practicing medicine, then you're, even if it's not explicitly stated for gain, you are sort of currying favor with people with a worldly art. So it's not something monks ought to be doing. Happy New Year. Just wondering what we are supposed to imagine when we transition to boundless consciousness. Try to think of consciousness as energy. Um, no, you shouldn't really be trying to imagine anything. You just you start. It's always the whole key of this meditation is you don't conjure anything up. Um, you start with boundless. Starting with boundless space. There's consciousness being aware of space. Okay, so now ignore space. What's left? Now just be aware of what's left when you withdraw your attention from space, and you'll find it. You'll find boundless consciousness. How seldom is beings in the formless jhana levels? It's pretty rare, I think. I don't think it's. I don't think it's a very populous place. That's awesome. I've actually had some powerful experience from the Zen perspective of the unborn mind. And watching your talks on the realms is something I've been working to integrate to a pleasant experience for myself and then those around me. Is it okay to practice multiple types of meditation? For example, Vipassana and Maranasati, is it more advisable to stick to one type? Yeah, that's also a very good question. It, I think it's useful to have a toolkit of different meditations and to experiment, do different ones at different times. But it's also uh, good to avoid being too unfocused in your practice. You should have one or two main meditations that you do regularly, and they're your bedrock practice, and then you can incorporate other ones now and again. So it's just like a middle path. Don't be too dogmatically fixed on one meditation, and also avoid the other extreme of being a kind of spiritual dilettante, doing a little of this and a little of that, and never really getting very deep into anything. Sorry for so many questions. Are 32 parts arranged in a certain order? Yes. I noticed brain is stuck near the excrement and bile, at least in the Sri Lankan list. Yes. That's kind of interesting. If anyone finds that list, it was originally was 31 parts. That's all that we in the sutta. That's all it's mentioned is 31 parts. Then the commentary adds brain as an additional part, um, and it's a curiosity from our point of view of moderns is that the ancient Indians had no idea what the brain was or what it was for. In the Sudimagga, there's a extensive section on the 32 parts of the body, and for each body part, there's a description, which includes its color, its location, and so forth, and also its function, which is an interesting medical historical text just to look at how they understood the body. And what they say about brain,
It's 7 o'clock.
is that brain is a type of marrow found in the skull of the head, and when you're sick, like when you have a cold, it liquefies and drips out of your nose. They always associated mind, the physical seat of mind in the body, as being the heart. Formless meditation seems like going further down the rabbit hole, a sort of trap. Rebirth in the formless realms results in a unfathomably lengthy Adamic life. Isn't this a real danger? No, not really. I mean, so what's a few hundred kappas? it's a, it's an, it's another form of rebirth, and it's if you end up being reborn there, it's way better than being reborn as a dog or something. I mean, it doesn't lead directly to enlightenment, but um, it also doesn't really hurt. Cosmology question. It is mentioned that there are innumerable world systems with similar setups. Similar setups. Does this mean there are Buddhas in other world systems even at this moment? Yeah, there because the world systems are infinite. There's almost certainly Buddhas someplace. The idea is there's never two Buddhas in the same world system at once, and in fact, that's extended to say that within a sphere of 10,000 world systems, there can only be one Buddha at a time. And I think the origin of that is because in a number of places when the Buddha gives an important discourse, it says that the devas from 10,000 world systems attended to hear it. It seems that the exercise dissolves even the sense of presence, and your first hand clap was a return. When I removed, this is another one, when I removed consciousness at the last stage, there was only emptiness, void. Is that correct? Yeah, it is an exploration of emptiness. The name of the sutta is Chula Sunyata, the lesser discourse on sunyata, on emptiness. Would that not be the dimension of nothingness? Well, it's subtle. Like there's degrees. Like nothingness is a kind of emptiness, but neither perception or non-perception is empty, even of the concept of emptiness. What will be the topic of your next video? Yeah, I don't know yet. I don't know. I kind of like this. I've gotten into doing this series, like having a few related videos in a row. Um, I was thinking maybe doing Abhidhamma. Would that interest people? To do a few lectures on Abhidhamma? Or does anybody have other suggestions? Got one vote for Abhidhamma. Okay, yeah, people seem to be interested in that. Okay. Does the cessation of perception and feeling lead to further rebirth? Yes, because it's still a form of becoming. Any form of conditioned existence leads to further rebirth. Okay, we're getting lots of enthusiastic replies for Abhidhamma. So we'll start a series on Abhidhamma next week. Hopefully, I still have the bandwidth. I unfortunately have this limited internet, so that second half of the month it becomes dodgy. But we'll see. I don't think I haven't done as much zooming this month as I did last month, so I may have still some bandwidth left. Okay, so maybe we'll wrap it up for now, and um, see you next week, internet willing, bandwidth willing, and we'll begin a series on Abhidhamma. Right here.